So essentially, my point is, if you are thinking UPSC mains is difficult or likha nahi ja sakta, that is a sheer myth. If you have the right sources of current affairs and know how to tackle current affairs, it becomes very easy. But what is the difference between actually how a ranker approaches a current affairs and how the rest of the students approach current affairs? Hello everybody, good evening. Now, there's one thing, current affairs is very essential for mains and everybody knows that. In today's session, we are essentially going to explore that a bit कि आप सबने एक चीज तो मार्क की होगी यूपीएससी पेपर्स के अक्रॉस. जब भी यूपीएससी का मेंस ओवर होता है, यू विल सी अ लॉट ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूट्स एंड लॉट ऑफ पीपल टेकिंग आउट डॉक्यूमेंट्स कि हमारे करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन से इतने क्वेश्चंस आए थे. सो दैट मीन्स दैट एवरीबडी हु इज रीडिंग दोस मैगजीन्स should have been able to answer questions in the mains, but usually that is not the case. That Shambhavi, stick with me today. Today is a very interesting session and I would request all of you to please participate and ask questions, because it is very it's slightly complex territory. We are moving into current affairs in general. You'll get a lot of skills which you will get to know about a lot of skills which you should be handling. So if you see after every mains, you will see कि across the market and across the net you will find materials available कि हमारे पेपर से इतने आए थे इतने, तो उस हिसाब से सबका अच्छा मार्क्स आना चाहिए. But what is the difference between actually how a ranker approaches a current affairs and how the rest of the students approach current affairs? In this session, this is what we are going to take initially, ki how to make current affairs notes, how do you read editorials, and how do you sort news ki last mein jaake revision easy ho. So I myself, Nishit Nirvan Tripathi, I am the faculty of Samachar Manthan at Civilsdaily. Now, Samachar Manthan especially in the recent times has become very relevant for two aspects. One is obviously current affairs, a general awareness. You get to know about it, a lot of things which helps you generally during the preparation. Prelims में भी काम आता है, mains में interview. But more significant, especially in the recent years, has been mains. अभी ये कैसे हुआ है? Let us explore that. So this was one question which came last year. All of you, please go through it once. The question tells कि examine the need for electoral reforms as suggested by various committees with particular reference to one nation, one election principles. Please feel free to switch on your mic and reply as well. या फिर यहाँ पे chat box में लिखते चलो. So this was the question which came this year. Examine the need for electoral reforms as suggested by various committees with particular reference to one nation, one election principles. Now, if somebody asks you कि यहाँ पे आंसर क्या होना चाहिए, so I am asking you, forget कि आपने क्या पढ़ा है क्या नहीं. Imagine this is a 10th class question which you are getting in your 10th class boards exam. Hi Siddharth. So please reply and tell me कि what the main body of this answer will be. Anybody? Ravi, Muskan? Okay, so one is the electoral reforms, as in the simultaneous election and election commission. That is what Sashi tells. Okay, Chanchal, if it happens, democracy will come to an end. Now, this is a very extreme viewpoint from each and every public policy. Yeah, each and every current affairs ka news item has its both positives and negatives. As future bureaucrats, that is what you are going to do. We will delve into that deeper. Pros and cons of it. Okay, of one nation, one election. So the question is asking you the need for electoral reforms. Now, this is the question. I get pros of it, but one thing which it asks you extra is the high level committees. So essentially, all of you are more or less telling the same answer and which is more or less correct. But अभी हमें चेक करना है कि डिफरेंस कहाँ होता है. चलो, तो इस क्वेश्चन को अटेम्प्ट करने के लिए बच्चा एसेंशियली दो चीजों पे रिलाई करता है. फर्स्ट इज हिज स्टैटिक प्रिपरेशन, जो कि पॉलिटी के लिए लक्ष्मीकांत बाइबल जैसा बन गया है. तो लक्ष्मीकांत में एक इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स का चैप्टर है एंड देयर इज अ सेक्शन कॉल्ड एज कमिटीज रिलेटेड टू इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स. एंड फिर देन इट हैज गॉन ऑन एंड ऑन टाइमलाइन वाइज कि 96 से पहले क्या इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स हुए, फिर 96 के बाद. तो ये बच्चे का पहला सोर्स रहता है. दूसरा सोर्स रहता है करंट अफेयर्स. नाउ करंट अफेयर्स में लास्ट ईयर एक पर्टिकुलर कमिटी आई थी, रामनाथ कोविंद हाई लेवल कमिटी, जिसने एक समरी, इट हैड प्रोवाइडेड अ समरी ऑन साइमल्टेनियस इलेक्शंस इन इंडिया एंड इट हैड रिटन अ नंबर ऑफ पॉइंट्स which more or less included 1 rationale, 2 implementation, 3 constitutional provisions, 4 logistical issues. Now इसको बच्चा कहीं से भी पढ़ सकता है, बट चीज है कि आपके दिमाग में जो माइंड मैप फर्स्ट बनेगा ये क्वेश्चन देख के, आप अपने प्रिपरेशन सोर्सेस पे जाओगे, विच इज 1 स्टैटिक सोर्स लक्ष्मीकांत, सेकंड करंट अफेयर्स. एम आई क्लियर टिल नाउ? But let us read the question again. Examine the need for electoral reforms as suggested by various committees. Now, here a critical word which we all missed in our first attempt is with particular reference to one nation, one election principle. That means we have to examine the need for electoral reforms with special reference to this, keeping this various committees as our primary material, not any static book or not any current affairs book. It is direct कि various committees को reference में रखो, electoral reforms analyze करो और special reference दो one nation one election principle को. हमने जिस तरह से अभी तक अप्रोच किया, जो पहले स्लाइड्स में देखा, हम ये कर रहे थे. स्टैटिक दो चीजें हैं, इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स एंड कमिटी नेम्स. करंट अफेयर्स एक चीजें हैं, साइमल्टेनियस इलेक्शंस. फाइनली वी गो एंड राइट अ आंसर जहां पे भी फ्रैगमेंटेशन पता लगता है कि यू हैव रिटन ऑल द पॉइंट्स बट दे आर नॉट कनेक्टेड टू ईच अदर बिकॉज द क्वेश्चन इज दिस, स्टैटिक क्रॉस करंट अफेयर्स. Am I clear till now? Question आपसे पूछ रहा है to analyze the static part in the context of current affairs. Now I'll show. तो फिर first question आता है कि बच्चा लिखे कहां से. Here your current affairs becomes very crucial because I remember last year. So this is what we did. Now if you see the report जो कि आपने current affairs में पढ़ा होगा, high level committee report on simultaneous elections in India, which was headed by our ex-president Ramnath Kovind ji. It talked about, if you see the annexures, this is exactly what UPSC has asked. Reports of committees and commissions. This is the question in the context of simultaneous elections. Right? तो अभी सो वी बेसिकली आर कमिंग टू अ पॉइंट कि हर यूपीएससी क्वेश्चन का एक ना एक कोई सोर्स तो आया हुआ होता है जहां से उसे क्वेश्चन मिलता है, एंड वी स्टिक टू अ पर्टिकुलर ट्रेडिशनल सोर्स विच हैज बीन हैंडेड ओवर टू अस फ्रॉम आवर पास्ट एस्पिरेंट्स और सीनियर्स. अभी लेट अस टेक वन मोर क्वेश्चन. Now analyze the role of local bodies in providing good governance at local level. and bring out the pros and cons of merging rural local bodies with the urban local bodies. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Just stay with me and you'll see that static may you have two parts here again. Role of local bodies, which asks you about to analyze the role of local bodies in providing good governance. And so it is crossed with good governance. Current से है merging rural local bodies with urban. ये current से कैसे है? Because last year a number of news items had come in the state newspapers which talked about Tamil Nadu beginning its exploratory process for potential merger of village panchayats with urban local bodies. And I'm telling you, you pick up the news, current affairs, news magazines of last year completely, you will find nobody covering this. अभी क्या बच्चे को जब वो क्वेश्चन आता है एग्जाम में, तो he or she particularly relies on this aspect, और उसने करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन में शायद लोकल गवर्नमेंट के बारे में कुछ पढ़ा होगा. तो द लोकल गवर्नमेंट पार्ट इन द लक्ष्मीकांत बुक essentially consists of Panchayati Raj and municipalities and just talks about the provisions. Now, if we go back to the question, it talks about bring out the pros and cons of merging the rural local bodies with the urban local bodies. तो इसमें प्रॉब्लम ये होता है बच्चों को कि वहां पे मेंस में बहुत जेनेरिक आंसर्स लिखते हैं, जिसकी वजह से मार्क पे इफेक्ट होता है. तो अभी इसको अप्रोच कैसे करते? क्या एक्चुअली यूपीएससी बहुत रैंडम सवाल पूछता है? इफ यू सी अगेन, नाउ दिस इज समथिंग वी टुक फ्रॉम इग्नू, द टीम एसेंशियली, एंड इफ यू सी हियर the trend towards consolidation, and there's a topic on this which is exactly the question here, and it has been in the policy circle news since a long time. So and it was then again covered, merging villages into cities, more unfunded mandate. It was covered in Observer Research Foundation का article where it talks about the Pune Municipal Corporation in Maharashtra and presents a case study and analyzes the exact same question which was asked in UPSC. So essentially, my point is, if you are thinking UPSC mains is difficult or लिखा नहीं जा सकता, that is a sheer myth. If you have the right sources of current affairs and know how to tackle current affairs, it becomes very easy. Because once, if you have notes, one page notes, isi cheez ka, then this answer will be better than anybody else who would be writing in the exam. So essentially, current affairs mein there are 3 problems which an aspirant faces. Wait till last, I'll show you one very current news item and how we have taught that in the Samachar Manthan class. First is spotting the news. Current affairs का मतलब ये बिल्कुल नहीं है कि you read 200 पेज के magazines before the exams. It is not humanly possible that you will remember that and export that on the paper on the day of the exam. It becomes very difficult for any student to approach that. और second problem वहां पे जो होती है, spotting the news. Now we saw urban local bodies and rural local bodies का question. That news was not spotted by anybody. Second, lack of identifying the fundamental themes. This was a very small news, but the theme here was merger of local bodies, or I can say consolidation of local bodies. Now, if you are really well versed with identifying those themes, then your current affairs for mains becomes a cakewalk. Then you have static current mismatch. This one we took up in the simultaneous elections wala news item. Simultaneous elections में आपको कुछ पूछ रहे हैं, but current में already आया हुआ है, because करंट अफेयर्स देखो, क्वेश्चन जो बना रहा है करंट अफेयर्स का, वो ये थोड़ी ना देखेगा बच्चा क्या पढ़ा है या कहां से पढ़ा है. हिज आइडिया वुड बी कि अच्छा, साइमल्टेनियस इलेक्शन पे रिपोर्ट आया है, दैट वाज इन द न्यूज, लेट मी सी द टेबल ऑफ कंटेंट्स कि कौन कौन सा है. आई डोंट थिंक ही और शी रीड्स द एंटायर रिपोर्ट एज वेल. So that is how questions are framed, because they take a news and identify the fundamental themes, which is the most crucial part. Now, I'll show you an example of last week's class, in fact. Okay, before that, we'll see one more question. It talks about the public interest litigation in India. Explain the reasons for the growth of PIL in India. As a result of it, has the Supreme Court of India emerged as the world's most powerful judiciary? ठीक है. तो इसमें अभी अगर देखो, स्टैटिक प्रिपरेशन आपका रहेगा लक्ष्मीकांत, ऑब्वियसली पीआईएल के ऊपर 29 चैप्टर है एक सर्टेन एडिशन में, दैट माइट बी चेंजिंग हियर एंड देयर, where it talks about the meaning of PIL, features of PIL, scope of PIL, principles of PIL. So this first part, reasons for the growth of PIL in India, you will get somewhere here. Why PIL was introduced and then grew. Now, see the second part. Has the Indian Supreme Court emerged as the world's powerful judiciary as a result of these PILs? Now, there was a book which came out by the Cambridge Press, which talked about consequential courts. In that, the 10th chapter was exactly this: public interest litigation in India. And the first line of the summary is arguably one of the most powerful constitutional courts in the world. And then PIL and the relevance of PIL in this context was decided and discussed. PIL में हम जब जनरली पढ़ने जाते हैं ना, अब कोई भी कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट, कोई भी इमटेरियल की विच मटेरियल यू आर फॉलोइंग, हमारा फर्स्ट अप्रोच रहता है PIL challenges, initiatives, Supreme Court cases, way forward. We stop there and then move on to the next question, because that is what has been fed and that is what has been going on by many, whoever they teach, whoever so teaches. But my point is, agar aap PIL पढ़ रहे हो and what is its transformation on Supreme Court of India, it is being discussed at the level of Cambridge universities. So then that must be something which is in news but not covered in the current affairs magazines, because they're prepared from Hindu and Indian Express. I'll be straight out with you there. So now coming back, I'll show you an example of what we did last week. It was a really exciting class for me as well, because I like a certain amount of research going into each and everything. Now, this was the particular art news item. आपने इस पे Instagram reels भी बहुत सारे देखे होंगे, where it talks about how in the recent GST Council meeting, the group of ministers had proposed a hike in the aerated drinks, cigarettes, and tobacco to approximately 35%. And there was, again, that news was covered across many newspapers. This one is of Hindu and this one is of Indian Express. You go and check any current affairs magazine or any current affairs class, the things which they would have studied here is the GST rate. What is the present GST rate? What is the composition of GST Council? मैक्सिमम अगर किसी ने एनालाइज किया होगा तो इम्पैक्ट ऑन सेंटर स्टेट fiscal relations. Whenever this topic comes up in any magazine or any website, these are the aspects where they will discuss. Now, I'm not telling this is not important. This is very important. But we just saw how UPSC is trending and moving ahead with its questions. Now, so this is what actually each and every one of them is sending out on the net. previous trends, current move, then prelim specific. We had previously national calamity contingent duty. It was an excise duty on specific harmful products established under the 2001 Finance Act. Then they move into the existing GST structure. You should know this. I'm not denying it at all. But what is the broader theme here? Just as we discussed for the questions which were asked last year in this year in UPSC mains, what is the broader theme here? Then when I approached this particular topic, the broader theme was this: how does reforms in the fiscal space impact public health outcomes? Now, this is something you will not get anywhere, neither you'll analyze. Probably you'll get this question directly in GS3 or a GS2, where the question would look something like this: do you really think the fiscal space reforms impact public health outcomes? Analyze in the context of the present move of the government with regard to taxing higher GST. But this was the fundamental theme which we struck out from this particular news items. Then what are the components which essentially talks about the fiscal space reforms? Fiscal space reforms actually moves ahead in terms of a few particular things. एक, revenue mobilization, then expenditure prioritization की health sector को for public health outcomes हम prioritize कैसे कर रहे हैं अपना expenditure. Then you have central grants and transfers. Then institutional reforms. For example, here one more example will come, that is National Health Authority. So essentially we are using current affairs to find the fundamental theme here. And once we have found fundamental theme, the examples are from current affairs across the year, not just from this particular topic. यहां तक तो सब पढ़ेंगे. This is the broader theme. And what is the concept of the theme? This is the concept. Sustained economic growth will lead to a higher fiscal capacity. A higher fiscal capacity would lead to a rise in government expenditure and government revenue. Essentially, it will provide a higher fiscal space for health. And when it will provide a higher fiscal space for health, our expenditure in health would be higher as of a percentage of GDP. And so we will move to better health outcomes, which will then lead to sustained economic growth. So now, do you see the difference of how one approaches a particular news item? न्यूज आइटम तो इतना ही था जो हेडलाइंस में आया था और कई कई जगह कवर हुआ होगा. Everybody on the call, did you understand this part? And how we moved to that particular theme, which was actually the base or fundamental of this particular news item. So this is today's, till now we have had 3 webinars. Today's webinar was specifically to tell you कि it's not about how much you learn या कितना memorize कर रहे हो. It is also not about कि how much language training or good language training you have. Essentially कि आप एक छोटे से news item को लेके उसको फंडामेंटल पॉलिसी रेस्पेक्ट में उसका जो हार्ट एंड सोल है, हाउ मच यू आर एबल टू गेट. I think this particular thing also addresses the question which someone asked in between, ki how do we approach editorials? What is the crux of that editorial? There are 2 things. Samachar Manthan mein jaise we covered something from a high level committee report, something from a book of Cambridge University Press. No, that is not easy for someone say preparing, and that is where me and my team comes in. Having that, I think current affairs, how do you approach current affairs? I think you all have a better picture after today. Any specific questions which you would like to? Chanchal, see, I would recommend first cover the PYQs, then know the syllabus, read the syllabus, revise the syllabus, and then you will start developing that skill slowly and steadily. Like I in Samachar Manthan classes, what I try to do is at the starting, I just give them a list of the headlines and allow the students to analyze कि किसका fundamental theme important है. And strangely, it's a pleasant thing to see कि in the first class which I took, hardly anybody was able to identify. अभी पहले से ही उन्हें पता रहता है कि यही डिस्कस होने वाला है. Now that is a skill which comes with practice as well. See, practice. One thing, you will come across a lot of things during your preparation schedule. ये बुक खरीद लो, वो बुक खरीद लो, ये इसमें कोर्स कर लो, वो कर लो. Essentially, what will matter to you is find someone who or yourself develops the skill rather than giving you more and more content. Shambhavi, for covering background of current affairs, I would always say कि stick to your static book. क्योंकि if you stick to your static book, आपको फायदा ये होगा कि वो भी revise होते जाएगा and you will be able to connect it better. Don't minimal resources. अगर आपने एग्जामिनेशन 1 महीना है और आपको लग रहा है कि आपने 3 बुक्स नहीं पढ़े हैं और रिवीजन करना है, तो ये पेपर अभी भी आया, ऑलवेज गो फॉर रिवाइजिंग. और ये समझ लो कि वो 3 बुक से क्वेश्चन नहीं आएगा. रिविजन एंड प्रैक्टिस, nothing more than that. Like in Samachar Manthan classes, I ideally take not more than 4 issues a week. And I'm being honest with you, there are 8 to 10 issues which come up every week. I take 4 issues and ask the students to read these aspects continuously for the next 2-3 months. I take class every week. So by that logic, you see, if a person is reading 16 to 20 issues per week, so in a 6 months where I'll be with them, they will be covering at least 120 issues, and the level of issues will be this, which has examples and all the content. So if you are mastering 120 issues of fundamental themes or the main crux, then there's no looking back when you go ahead कि यूपीएससी कुछ भी क्वेश्चन पूछ ले, इन 120 इश्यूज से तो हमें कंटेंट तो मिल जाएगा. My whole idea of going ahead with Samachar Manthan in this particular way is, one thing is key sources should be as minimal as possible. Once you reduce the number of sources, your number of iterations of revisions या कितनी बार आप रिवाइज करोगे वो काफी बढ़ जाता है. Say something about Samachar Manthan, मतलब समझ. तो अपकमिंग बैचेस के बारे में आई थिंक निशा विल टेक दोस क्वेश्चंस.
Yes, I'll take these questions once we are done with the session.
Okay. Okay. So about the schedule and how classes are going on of Samachar Manthan. See, Samachar Manthan classes are every weekend, and every week I personally take up 4 to 5 issues. So anytime you join, start from then and there itself and go ahead with that. Because from January onwards, I'll also be starting some form of revision where I'll be revising content from the previous months. So I don't think anybody will be at loss because a few of my students joined this last week only. So how they cover that part, recorded videos will obviously be available, but in the class also I'll revise them once here and there. Yes, Tanveer, Varshini, Yashvendra, Jaydev. You need not make SM notes from SM PDF, which are actually being given. Well, you attend the classes, Surjit, once you attend the classes, you will get to know which all material to cut and which all to keep. So that will become very easy then and there. See, Ravi, what micro theme, I'm going to tell you the difference now. Please stay with me here for a couple of minutes, everybody. There are two aspects. What I said today was fundamental theme. Fundamental theme is nothing but the crux of the current affairs topic which is coming up in the magazine or the news. Now, micro theme is something, a really fundamental innovation in your preparation of static part. जैसे मान लो अभी तक जो आप पढ़ रहे हो, इट इज समथिंग लाइक दिस कि आप पोस्ट मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री अगर ले लूं, पोस्ट 1857. Now this is your syllabus topic. Suppose this is your syllabus topic. But UPSC has been particularly focusing, say, upon the social reform movements. So this becomes a micro theme. Now, where we have actually sorted the questions over the past many years, कि इससे question आ रहा है, again and again, there's a larger probability of this coming in the exam, और यही theme important है. So this is what micro theme is. कि अगर आपके पास मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री में 10 टॉपिक्स हैं या फिर 5 टॉपिक्स हैं, बट इफ यू सी पास्ट ईयर पेपर्स, देन क्वेश्चन टू थीम 2 और थीम 4 से मैक्सिमम क्वेश्चन आए हैं. दिस बिकम्स योर माइक्रो थीम, एंड दैट इज हाउ at CD we take the preparation of students. It's not that we don't teach the rest of the themes, we do teach, but इस पे focus ज्यादा रहता है. And this preparation of micro themes has taken a hell lot of time, because if you see the questions, sorting them is a bit tricky. Am I clear, Ravi? Does anybody has any other question with respect to these aspects? You can tell me. Kartike, Jyoti, it'll be great if you can ask any other question you have with regard to current affairs preparation or UPSC mains in general. Yes, Shashi, what about PIB? See, Jyoti, it depends upon your कि आप समाचार मंथन की जो क्लासेस में मैं लेता हूं, तो वहां तो मुझे पता रहता है कि कौन सा बच्चा कहाँ पे है, किस स्टेज ऑफ प्रिपरेशन में है, तो वहां पे गाइड करना इजी रहता है. ऐसे टोटली मैं बोल नहीं सकता कि हाँ हर किसी का बनाओ या नहीं, बट इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन व्हाट लेवल ऑफ प्रिपरेशन यू आर. समाचार मंथन सीरीज विल सफाइस.
Students, if you have any question, you can raise your hand. I'll unmute you and you can ask your question.
Sorry.
Sir, are we done with the session?
I'm done with the session. I'm taking up some questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Harshit, it depends upon, honestly, coaching for UPSC, it's too much of money. Mentorship, I would prefer that. To focus current affairs with respect to micro themes. Okay, micro theme, uska static part जो भी रहेगा, that becomes its micro theme. So if I take this thing which we took now GST proposal, यहाँ पे taxation के related अगर कोई micro theme होगा, that becomes its main micro theme. या फिर public health outcomes, social justice में health वाला जो aspect है, health related कोई micro theme है. The practice, that is what I can say here. Another to this question of more and more be aware of your PYQs, syllabus, and then practice. Jyoti, then one thing I'll tell you: do not make notes of each and every current affairs topic. First, see those current affairs which जिसका आपने static पढ़ रखा होगा. जिसका static पढ़ रखा है, तो उसके current affairs notes बनाना चालू कर लीजिए. If you have any mentor or someone, then I think he or she will be really helpful in doing this. So someone had written some message with respect to he was in third year or something.
Yeah. I'm in third year of college at IIT Madras and thinking to start UPSC preparation.
Okay. Okay. You can connect with some mentor, yeah. They'll help you out.
Yes, Harshit, you can drop your query here.
Yeah.
We'll have a detailed discussion regarding this thing.
Shambhavi, I will suggest कि आप दिन का एक editorial पढ़ो. If it's taking time, दिन का एक editorial पढ़ो, make the important notes of that particular editorial. Because if a news item is so important, it will come again. So you will not miss out on any news. See, all be rest assured कि content coverage या current affairs coverage will never be an issue. What you do with that content, that is going to be an issue. Okay, Muskan, you can tell. You had raised your hand.
So there is one question, sir. We read a lot of news, but with time we leave them behind. At which frequency we should keep reminding ourselves them?
Oh, okay. In that case, suppose I would suggest कि if you make a material, I'll say कि every third week एक particular news item पे वापस come back करो. कि every third week you're revising that particular week's news which you had read 3 weeks before.
Okay, so do we have to cover 2 years current affairs for science, tech, and environment?
Again, I think if you would have watched the last webinar, there are many questions जिनका source actually काफी पीछे रहता है. If you have time, then cover those 2 years का. Else 1 to 1.5 years, most of the news items gets covered. And even after that, if you are not able to attempt a particular question, तो जितने भी prelims दे रहे हैं, किसी ने वो attempt नहीं किया. Shambhavi, see, this is not 1 month ka preparation. एंड ट्रस्ट मी व्हेन आई से दिस कि आप जब फाइनली एग्जाम में जाके बैठोगे ना, आपको वो भी याद नहीं रहेगा कि आपने फर्स्ट एडिटोरियल में क्या नोट्स लिखा था। रादर देन गेट दैट इज व्हाट आई एम टेलिंग, रादर देन गेटिंग टू मच ऑफ कंटेंट ऑन टू योर नोट्स, जितना टाइम हो रहा है उसके हिसाब से प्रिपरेशन करो। अगर एक का टाइम हो रहा है, एक का करो और उसी को 2 बार पढ़ लो। If the other editorial is more important and covers content, good content, that will again come back to you in some for the form or the other. या तो कोई मैगजीन में भी उसमें लिखा होगा, या तो किसी ने अपने आंसर में लिखा होगा। If the content is that good. Got it, Shambhavi?
Sir, I have received one DM. So someone is asking, is Samachar Manthan enough for 2025 and 2026 attempt? Like if we just go through.
Yeah, it's more than enough.